Good morning, everyone. Are you going to be part of the problem, or are you going to be a part of the solution? When you look at Leviticus and the gospel today and what Jesus unfolds, it's a challenge because it's the pinnacle of what it is to be a passionate disciple of Jesus Christ. Are you going to be a part of the problem, or are you going to be a part of the solution? So this week, before we get into that, many of you know I had a chance to get up to Vermont, spend a few days during the week with some friends of mine from seminary, and my favorite scripture is, faithful friend is a sturdy shelter. The one who finds one finds a treasure. And so there's a group of us that definitely know that we'll be there for each other no matter what. And when you have a group of guys, as a priest, you're with people in their very most wonderful times in their life. Their marriage, the birth of the child, the baptisms. You're there for Catholic education and CCD and getting them confirmed and all of these types of things. You're there in the most tragic times in our existence as a human being. When you're facing surgery and you don't know. Or you get diagnosed with something and you got to walk with them in a very difficult time. Or in those instances where you have to lay a beloved family member to rest, you are there walking with the people of God. And no one knows what that feels like except for another priest. In the diocesan priesthood, you're also yoked with administration. You're basically a CEO of a small company, and it is on you. And if the budget falls short, it's your fault, nobody else's. And you have to bear that. And if you have multiple parishes, then you have multiple companies. And if you have schools, then you have more, and it just kind of piles on. But we all come together, and we encourage each other, we lament, and also we give each other a hard time. All right? So if you are really good friends with somebody, if you're best friends with somebody, you can mess with them. And we did. So my one buddy, he was Division I wrestler for Boston College. I don't think Boston College has wrestling anymore, but back then he wrestled for them. This is like poking the bear. He could probably take all four of us, at the same time. So he falls asleep early. When you're with a bunch of guys and you fall asleep early, what's going to happen? You're going to get messed with. All right, that's for it. So he took some shaving cream, big pile. Now, I was courageous enough to do this, but I'm not stupid. So I'm on the other side of the couch, kind of just give him a little tease and boom, and he gets up and he's ready to take us all on. But then he just starts laughing. See, and when you have a best friend, you can do something like that, and everybody's laughing at you. And you can laugh at yourself. And you can laugh with them, laughing at you. Why? Because you know they love you. Because you know that they have your back. Because 3 years ago, when Stowe's mom died, and it was in the midst of my vacation, I left it and came running and flying to his side. See, that's the kind of friendship that they have your back. And it's also the kind of friendship where you can goof around and you can joke around and you can say, and laugh, and everybody laughs. And no one's angry. Now, he did say, Shulkins, paybacks are a problem. So I'm sure I'll get mine. Nevertheless, I hope you have friends. I hope you stay in touch with them. If you haven't seen them lately, I hope you give them a call. Faithful friend is a sturdy shelter. The one who finds one finds a treasure. So we encourage each other even in the message today. So Leviticus says an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. By the way, that is, see, you're either going to be a part of the problem or part of the solution. And what was happening here when Moses is unfolding the scriptures of God in Leviticus, he's saying an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Okay, he's deflating the situation. Have you ever been wronged? What happens in a human being that's created good, who has a fallen nature, who is redeemed in God, but still has, concupiscence and leans towards sin? When you and I are wronged, what happens? Do you want justice, or do you want more than justice? If you're honest with yourself. So, in other words, putting it into the situation of Leviticus, if a servant or an employee gets their eye wounded, I'm angry. And I don't just want to wound a servant's eye of my opposition. I want both eyes. Or I want an eye and an arm. I want more. And that's understandable, emotionally illogical, from a standpoint of reason. And so the scripture goes out, at the absolute most, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. It's supposed to be deflating the situation and saying, there's injustice here. We want to seek justice, but we want to temper it with mercy. And so Leviticus frames it there. Jesus takes it a step further and says, why don't you try and love like my Father in heaven? And that means that if you come across a problem, you have to say, well, am I going to be a part of the solution, or am I going to be give to that problem even more? So with our young people, I kind of developed a way of catechesis. I call it visualized integrated catechesis. I show them something. It's kind of spatial, a little bit of a takeoff from Montessori, but I show them a picture. And so in this particular picture, it's got gasoline, it's got a fire extinguisher, and it's got a fire in between. And they know when they see this, am I going to be a part of the problem, the gasoline, or am I going to be a part of the solution, the extinguisher? All right? So who can tell me which saint this is? Who is it? Gianna. You don't know the saint, but you know the story. I really just need the saint. Yes. Saint Dominic Savio. Okay? So Gianna, I'm going to just tell the story myself just because we're here on a weekend. So Saint Dominic Savio, he did what we are all called to do in the gospel. He turned the other cheek. It's extremely important, and I hear people still talk about turning the other cheek as being something passive. It is anything but that. In Jesus' time, if you struck somebody on the cheek, you struck somebody of a lower status, and you backhand them. So you slap them on the right cheek with your right hand. Okay, you backhanded them, and it meant you are a lower status than me. You do not possess the same dignity as I do. I beat you down, and I beat you into submission. So one of the pinnacles of a mature follower and disciple of Jesus Christ is exercising the turning of the cheek. And what it's saying is sometimes you have to run in a situation. You have to run. It's smart. Remember, wisdom, think clearly, judge rightly, act decisively. Sometimes you're in a situation, walk away from it. Jesus did. Sometimes you have to stand and you fight, physically or in an argument, whatever. Sometimes you have to do that. Most of the time, you're turning the other cheek, and that is to stand your ground and act in such a way that will bring the other person or the group to a whole different level of intellectual and spiritual understanding. That's what Dominic Savio did. In his time, the 1800s, St. John Bosco, he gathered all of these orphan boys off the street. He gave them a house, a roof over their head, food in their stomachs. He educated them. He encouraged them. Dominic was a standout and is a saint, St. Dominic Savio. And in an instant where he was 12 years old, and there were two other boys who were 16 years old, both of them. And they were angry at each other, and they were ready to hurt each other. This was a time where you would see a lot of duels, all right, whether it was with a sword or with pistols. Of course, they were poor kids. They didn't have either of those. They were going to use rocks, sharp rocks. They were going to try and deeply hurt each other, even kill each other. So, and Dominic was small, and he was unable to physically restrain the boys. But as they took their steps and turned, Dominic stepped in the middle. And he spread his arms out, and he said, "You can go ahead and you can throw your stones at each other. But the first stone that you throw, it's got to put me down. You have to put me down first. And once you put me down, then you can throw stones at each other." Well, as you can imagine, that rocked the world of those two boys, the 16-year-olds. And it brought them to a whole different level of intellectual and spiritual understanding. They both came together, they shook hands, and that was it. We got to think about it. There are times where we got to run, there's times where we got to stand and fight, but most of the time we're called to the pinnacle of a discipleship of Christ, to turn the other cheek, to act in a way that's going to change somebody else's intellectual and spiritual understanding. It's extremely important that we understand this, and that we know that we're going to be called to do that every single day. While I was there in Vermont, one of my friends, the same one that we put the shaving cream, and he was, so I came to his parish last Lent, and I did a parish mission, and it really went well. And then I came back in May, and I did a retreat for the 8th grade. And the confirmandi had to attend the mission, and they also, of course, attended the 8th grade retreat. But Greg told me there was somebody in the who was going to get confirmed. He said, "Is Father Dennis going to come to our confirmation?" And of course, Father Stowe said, "No." He's got his own confirmations to go to, and parishes and all that other kind of stuff. So no, he's not going to be coming. He doesn't typically do that. And was like, oh, that would have been great. See, this person was one of those kids where you have to be a master of the redirect. And if you're a parent, you know this. Kids come at you, can't just smack them down. I mean, you can sometimes, but it's not a good idea. And they come at you, and you got to redirect that energy. And you got to redirect it again. And, I'm not criticizing the teachers and my classmate. They day in and day out, it's one thing. But for that kid, I understood where he was. And as soon as he started bark at me during the retreat, I knew exactly the way to redirect him and to connect with him. It was not running, not fighting, but acting in a way that made him think and that rocked his little world. And it did. And it got into his head to the point where he was like, "Is Father Dennis coming? That would be great. You know what? I might just fly up just for that confirmation." Is it somebody in your family, extended family? Is it somebody at work? Is it somebody in the parish, in the ministry that you're involved with? That you realize, this is one of those things weekly that I got to do. I got to stand here, and I have to turn the other cheek. because that's the power that changes lives. We don't do it on our own. God moves us through the power of the Holy Spirit, but we got to be open to it, and we also have to know the task at hand. That is in front of us. That's what I got to do. I'm gonna run sometimes. I'm gonna stand and fight, but most of all, I'm gonna stand and act in a manner that's gonna rock people's world, that's gonna change the way they think and where they are spiritually, with the power of love in Jesus Christ.